Welcome to the Nutritional Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Kyla Chanel. I'm a performance nutritionist specializing in sex differences in sport. I work with athletes from all over the world through my online private practice and sports nutrition programs. We here at Nutritional Revolution are here to cut through the BS promoted in the media and give you the science, literally straight from the research articles, as well as share client success stories and experiences around nutrition and racing. Please keep in mind, this podcast is created strictly for educational purposes only and should never be used as a replacement for medical diagnosis and treatment. If you like what you hear today, we would love for you to subscribe and share. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Nutritional Revolution podcast. It's Kyla Chanel here, your host, and today is a first. We have 3 guests, a combination of participants in a study and the study researcher herself. So this is a very fun and exciting episode. We have today Dr. Sarah Purcell, and she's an assistant professor and a Tier 2 Canada Research Chair at the University of British Columbia. And her research lab focuses on leveraging energy balance concepts to inform evidence-based nutrition strategies. Specifically, her works aim to utilize energy expenditure data to better define energy requirements and their determinants, investigate how factors like weight loss, exercise, and ovarian sex hormones affect appetite, energy intake, and energy expenditure, and translate research on energy expenditure into practice. Her lab employs a variety of advanced techniques to assess multiple aspects of energy balance, including doubly labeled water, body composition analysis, hormonal regulators of appetite, and diverse dietary intake measurements. Timm Döbert holds a PhD in global change ecology, and he's a fellow of the Royal Canadian Geographical Society, the Explorers Club, and the Scientific Exploration Society. His research focuses on the human footprint on nature from a tropical to temperate ecosystem. And in 2024, he cycled coast to coast across Canada from Halifax to Vancouver. Our third guest was Leanna Carriere, and she's a Canadian endurance athlete, strength coach, and health advocate, a former international pole vaulter, and Canada's first female decathlete. She has transitioned into ultra-endurance sports, completing Ironman triathlons and other long-distance events. And her work focuses on performance, resilience, and women's health, blending evidence-based training with real-world challenges. She completed a cross-Canada cycling expedition with Tim and is co-founder of 7 Summit Snacks and the Wings of Survival initiative, using sport to promote environmental awareness and human health. This episode honestly was super fascinating. I loved every second of it. We could definitely have them back. They got some fun adventures down the pipeline, so I know we will have them all back. Enjoy the episode, you guys. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Nutritional Revolution podcast. This is the first of its kind. Today's episode, we have 3 guests on the pod today. We have for you guys Dr. Sarah Purcell, we have Leanna Carriere, and Dr. Timm Döbert. Did I say that right? Kind of. He says it's okay. We're going to have a real fun time today because we are breaking down not just a study, but also the athletes in the study's personal experience. So this is going to be very fun for hopefully me and hopefully our listeners and hopefully you guys. But before we do that, we are going to break down and get everybody's 2 truths and a lie. This is going to be the biggest 2 truths and a lie I've ever done. So I'll start in the order that I introed you guys. So why don't we do Dr. Sarah, yours first?
Great. So I chose an extreme energy expenditure of energy intake theme in the animal kingdom because that's what we're talking about today.
Perfect.
Okay, so first one, a blue whale can burn up to 4 million calories a day.
4 million?
4 million.
Okay.
An African bush elephant can burn up to 200,000 calories a day.
Wow.
Or a polar bear can eat up to 60,000 calories in one sitting.
Oh, 60. Okay. This is all fascinating.
This is all fascinating. It's energy balance.
I kind of, part of me is like, these all could sound real to me. Goodness. I feel like polar bears don't eat that often, right? So like maybe they would put down a lot of calories in one sitting. An African bush elephant, I don't know if is that a smaller elephant than a normal? I don't know if that's a different size, but they're pretty big. I feel like they could 200,000, right? Mm-hmm. Calories per day, 4 million in a blue whale. I feel like that might be real. Maybe I'll go with the smallest one. I'm going to go with the polar bear being the lie. And we're
Okay.
going to find out the answer. These are going to be super fun, you guys. Okay. Leanna, you're up. What do you got for me?
Okay, mine's not nearly as cool as Sarah's. So you can, just a little more random. I've ran the Mount Everest Marathon. I've long jumped for Team Canada, and I own a chocolate company.
Ooh. All right.
What are you talking about? Yours are way cooler.
Wait, what was the first one you ran? Mount Everest
Marathon.
Marathon.
Yeah.
Is that a thing? I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a marathon that's
Is it at the base or like does it go up the mountain?
you start at base camp and then you run down.
I feel like I'm cheating by asking you questions.
I know I'm not kidding.
Now I feel like it's true. Okay. I forget if I saw something about if you did your sporting history. So I feel like the long jump thing, it might be true. I'm going to go with the chocolate company being alive. We will see at the end. And then Dr. Tim, why don't you break your 2 truths and a lie down for me in no particular order?
Right. So so we're also going to talk about birds perhaps a little bit. So I've got the bird question. Sorry, very, very sciencey too, but okay, 1, 2, 3. Birds are dinosaurs. Birds can only migrate during daylight.
Okay. Oh.
And some birds enjoy a vegan lifestyle.
Ooh. This is really fascinating. Okay, but I definitely feel like birds are dinosaurs. I definitely think that's true. The migration during daylight, I never really thought about that, but I never really thought about that. And enjoy a vegan lifestyle. I feel like that could also be true, but you do seem eating a lot of bugs. The last two are tricky. I feel like for sure they're dinosaurs. I'm gonna go with the migration during daylight. Only can migrate during daylight is a lie. That's my guess for now. These are going to be really cool. I'm like excited for all of these reveals at the end of the episode, you guys. So for our listeners, hang tight. We will reveal those answers at the end. But before we kind of start jumping into the study, I'm going to have you guys each give us like a little bit of a background. Tim, I'll start with you. You are a tropical ecologist. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, tropical ecologist, stranded in Edmonton. So I did both. It's sometimes where your kind of academic trajectory takes you. Sometimes it's just pure chance. And I got drawn into the tropics as a master's student, started working in Thailand, and eventually did my PhD on kind of topics like deforestation, forest fragmentation. So broadly speaking, the human impact on nature. But that's a couple of years behind me. So now I'm more a temperate scientist, becoming a bird scientist.
I love it. Is that ornithology? Is that the study of ornithology? Like you do bird? My friend is.
It would be, yeah, that's right. But I've always been more like a botanist.
Okay.
So all my topics, not necessarily because I'm more interested in plants, but again, sometimes you just get drawn into a certain subject and then you can start working on different topics. But birds are kind of pure passion and by chance now the focus of what we're doing.
Cool. I love it. And Leanna, you're a mom and also an extreme athlete.
I don't know how extreme I am. I've done multiple long endurance events.
Cool.
Been a personal trainer for almost 20 years now.
Oh.
Mom to a 9-year-old, and just, love being active and love being active in the outdoors and lots of kind of experience in that realm.
Amazing. I love it. And then Dr. Sarah, why don't you give us a little bit of breakdown of what brought you and maybe too what we're going to cover today. I'm very excited.
Yeah. So my research program is focused on energy balance. So energy expenditure, energy intake. It's primarily people with chronic disease, but I am an athlete myself. And so I'm starting to dip my toe into some of these more extreme examples of energy balance in humans. And I also a new mom. So I have a 10-month-old.
Oh, congrats.
Thanks.
That increases your energy expenditure, right?
Yes, especially now he's everywhere.
Yeah, chasing him around. So for our listeners, this term energy expenditure, I think sometimes people don't fully understand what that means and how that can be also tracked properly. I know we'll probably talk about doubly labeled water a bit today, but do you want to share with our listeners, what is energy expenditure and how does one properly track and calculate that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Energy expenditure is the energy your body uses both at rest, so just to keep your heart pumping and your brain thinking, your liver functioning. So that's resting energy expenditure. And then you have physical activity expenditure, which is movement, not only exercise, but all kinds of movement. And then you also have a thermic effective food, which is the energy needed to digest and assimilate food. Measuring it is quite challenging. So it's usually only measured in research settings. We can measure each component of those. The measurements that Tim and Leanna underwent measured totals, all the calories burned in a day, as well as the resting. And then from that, we can get an estimate of the physical activity and energy expenditure.
And did you do that through the doubly labeled water method? Yeah.
Yes. So doubly labeled water is it's double, so two different stable isotopes. Individual, it's very safe. People hear isotopes and think it's very dangerous, but it's actually been used in, premature babies, pregnant women, etc. So the way this works is individuals consume the water, and then over a span of anywhere from 7 to 14 days, usually, the difference in disappearance of those will give us within 2 to 5% accuracy total energy expenditure. So it's the best way to measure total energy expenditure in free living settings.
Interesting. So to kind of like nerd out a little bit and maybe take it to a little bit deeper level, because I do hear, like I was just at a conference 2 weeks ago and they were talking about energy expenditure and utilizing doubly labeled water and in endurance athletes as well. And how exactly though is that measuring energy expenditure? How do you, and if there's like an insane equation, I don't expect you to spew that out, but like, what is it? How is you're measuring the urine output of the doubly labeled water?
Exactly. Yeah. So
Okay.
it's urine output. And so the two isotopes that you consume are actually present in very, very, very low levels in tap water. We just enrich that with the dose that we give. And then the difference in disappearance rates of those two isotopes is going to give you carbon dioxide production. And then from that, you can estimate total energy expenditure.
Wow. Fascinating.
It is. Yeah.
Yes. At my conference too, they were talking about a company. I don't know if you've heard about this, and we can cut this out too, potentially. Amanda, feel free. But there's a company that's offering like a way to do it for the public.
Yes. Calorify.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and I've worked with them a little bit indirectly. I think it's the only company to actually do that. I will say it's quite expensive. So, obviously, you're not going to want to do this multiple times. I mean, I guess you could, but it's quite expensive. But yes, there's a direct to consumer company that does that now.
Yeah. Fascinating. I'm sure that will start to expand, I imagine, like all the other kind of techie stuff. Okay. So the study we're going to be diving into today is called Energy Balance in Cyclists on Plant-Based Diets During a 30-Day 43-kilometer ride across Canada. This is a study with 2 participants, which we have here on the pod. So I'm super excited to have both Leanna and Tim here with us to share their experience. What kind of like drove you to, I guess, do this study, Sarah? And then also Leanna and Tim, how did you guys become the volunteers for the study?
I'm just going to put it all on
Yeah, go
Tim
for
and
it.
Leanna. Like they start, they volunteered. Tim actually reached out to my previous supervisor, Carla Prado, at the University of Alberta, about potentially adding some nutrition measurements to this. And then Carla knew I loved sport and she recommended me. And then here we are.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Were both Leanna and Tim, were you both plant-based eaters prior to this study?
Yeah, we were both plant-based prior to the study.
All right.
for quite some time. Yeah.
And you were totally up for a 30-day, 4,300-kilometer ride across Canada. Like, were you trained for that? Like, leading into that?
Yeah, for sure. We did lots of training prior to it. We worked with a dietitian here in Edmonton, Lalitha Taylor. And yeah, Tim can maybe talk more on it, but he had this great idea of getting kind of the body tested, the nutrition tested, and the mind tested, and kind of collaborating with the U of A, University of Alberta, to get data on all three. Because we know how the nutrition can affect our mind or can affect our body, and we know physical output can affect what we eat, and the mind is all interconnected. So with the goal of perhaps coming out with a paper that kind of embodies all three. But Sarah and her team were just so awesome to be a part of, and we were more than willing to get tested.
That's awesome. So Sarah, what exactly were you trying to test through this study, and also why 30 days?
Well, I think the why 30 days is a better question for Tim and Leanna. But my main focus was on energy balance. And there is very little data on vegan athletes or plant-based athletes in relation to energy balance and exercise. And so for me, it was a very interesting question scientifically.
Yeah. So measuring energy balance, and then are you also looking at body composition and weight change through the 30 days as well?
Of course. Yeah. So we had nutrition intake, energy expenditure, as well as body composition and body weight changes.
Great. Cool. And then for Tim, why don't you share with us, like, how was the food structured? Were you going in with a plan? Were you guys reliant on gas stations? Was food supplied? Like, what did that look like through the 30 days?
Yeah, all supplied by Leanna. So it's almost a Leanna question. She was looking after after the cooking. So we did have certain vegan kind of sponsors who send us some product, but I was literally just eating all the time, and that strategy worked pretty well. So, but Leanna can kind of dive into the nitty-gritty nuances of what we did.
Yeah, why don't you share that, Leanna?
Yeah. So we're working with Lalitha and Sarah and getting some rough numbers of what our caloric expenditure would be kind of on a day-to-day basis. We kind of got a good idea of how much fat, carbs, and protein we needed to get in. Even prior to the ride, we were looking. So one thing I did notice was, and I mean, protein's such a hot topic right now, so I don't want to over talk about it too much, but I kind of realized that some of our vegan protein alternatives didn't have enough protein in it. So I made sure while we were on the road that I was, say, making a tofu-based rice in a pot. I try to keep everything in one pot. I throw an extra can of beans in there. So I try to add where I could for those kind of meals when we were cooking, because we were camping. On the go, we had some vegan alternatives, kind of this protein jerky that we'd eat, super simple sugars, chocolate, protein bars. We'd have fuel with electrolytes. So in the morning, I'd pre-make a bag with a certain amount of calories, I think twice. So in total, I think it was 4 days at the first 4 days at the beginning, and then in the middle, we had to track everything and write everything. So it's hard because when you're hungry, sometimes you just want to grab a handful from a bag and eat.
Yes.
So we had to pre-make those bags with kind of our nuts, our squares, and sometimes just a variety. I would say a variety of different foods. Yeah. Gas stations weren't, actually Subway was where we found the sweet zone. When we saw Subway, we got excited because you could get a big kind of vegan-based wrap, and for under $10, that was pretty awesome. I found a protein smoothie place. It's called, I think, Froyo or something. The middle of Saskatchewan on a gas station. It was like a mix yourself. I couldn't believe it. I walked out with these two cold because it was so hot. Protein drinks. So sometimes at the gas stations were really a mix of things. But we had my sister also, who also is she did study nutrition and she's a food scientist. So she sent groceries halfway through the ride. So we just walked into Safeway and everything was there.
Nice.
So we worked with Lalitha to really go over what we needed, and then just wanted to make sure we had enough of a variety. It was 2 grocery carts at Superstore I rolled out with, and then we had another big order halfway through from a Safeway.
Wow.
Yeah, protein-based cookies. So I try to make sure we're always getting enough protein in, which I think we did a pretty good job, Sarah, making sure we got enough calories. And I don't know if we'll get into it more, but yeah, like Tim's burns a lot of calories. Between the two of us, we're looking at 16,000 calories a day to which is a lot of food.
Is that fueling like 1-to-1, or is that that's fueling a percentage of what you're expending? The 16,000.
That was like, I think the total what we had to refill at the end of the day, right? So like throughout the day we were taking in.
Wow.
Tim was a little under, and I was able to kind of meet that 6,000. But I mean, a lot of that's very simple. I'd add extra oil into our meals. Just Tim's so great at eating, especially on the bike.
Part of the job, right?
So good at eating anything right. I can't stop to eat when I'm exercising a lot, so I have to take it in through drinks. Like Gatorades are really good for me. But Tim I'll look at him and he'll be like, "Yeah, I'm done my snack pack." And I'm like, "What?" I've had like 2 nuts. But he's really great at eating on the bike. I think it really helps when he does these long rides.
Yes. Yeah. So did either of you guys deal with any GI issues taking in that many calories, or cramping or nausea, burping, like anything like that throughout?
No.
I don't think so. No.
That's amazing. Wow.
No, it's been the time of our lives. Eating, cycling. No problems. I just briefly want to throw in, we did have a support vehicle, just so people don't think we took all that rice and tofu into our backpacks. So I don't think we mentioned that. There was actually a vehicle supporting us, which also allowed us to collect certain data, like urine samples, which otherwise we could have never collected.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and Leanna, it sounds like you guys are riding, I imagine, like a good chunk of the day, and then you're still coming back and cooking and preparing food after.
Yeah. I think that was the hardest.
Yeah.
I think going also leading into it, we knew like for Tim, he tends to cramp. So we knew that like races that he's had cramping issues before. So we made sure that we had, he was taking in enough of the salty type foods, that we're having some sort of electrolyte. My stomach doesn't do well with certain electrolytes. So I just find like the standard Gatorade is the way to go. Sometimes his mouth. So we've done events before where we kind of knew things that worked and didn't work. So we're able to kind of make sure we each had what we needed on board to sustain us and avoid bonking, cramps, any kind of gut issues, because that really is the worst.
Yeah.
All endurance people have gone through it, I think, a time or two, and then they're like, I need to call the dietitian.
Right. Yes. And then what was your day structure like? Tim, I'll have you share that. Like what time were you guys waking up? How long were you on the bike? Were you getting much sleep? What did that look like?
Yeah, Leanna, jump in if I'm getting something wrong. It's been a while, but I'd say we got up at 5, and everything, as you mentioned earlier, 30 days, everything was super structured because we really wanted to make sure it's useful data. So 30 days, no breaks in between, right? So 30 days nonstop. So we'd get up 5 o'clock in the morning, and then we'd start literally before really getting up, we'd be collecting data already. So we had those 3 different study elements, the psychology, physiology, and nutrition. So we'd be kind of taking the first measurements, and then just slowly getting the breakfast ready. And when you're out in nature, everything takes time, right? And then it's not always sunny, it's raining, and you got to manage your gear. So it'll easily take 2 hours until you get going, even though you haven't actually done that much.
Right.
But I'd say we'd start around 7 o'clock, and usually we'd get a good chunk of the day done in the mornings. You're a little bit in your kind of still dreaming mode, as not too much because you're on the road with traffic, but the time goes pretty quick. And then Bill, our support driver, he'd sort of overtake us. He'd go somewhere to do the washing, get our clothes fresh and clean again, and take lunch somewhere along the road. And just because it was so hot, we did this, I think, 1st of July until 30th of July, so
Right.
midst of summer. So just getting a bit of the shade. So he's got this nice van set up, and there's a bit of a kind of canvas just to hide, and having cool drinks in the vehicle, and cycle again in the afternoon. And so I think usually would be 9 to 10 hours on the bikes, but then this additional time on the road where you're stopping, and sometimes you take a photo, or you have to find a toilet in the middle of nowhere for Leanna to take a urine sample. These little bits and pieces, and then the time just goes. And then Bill would always keep an eye on distance and the next campsite and where could we spend the night. And so the days easily go, and then get somewhere. Leanna, like Bill setting up camp, Leanna cooking.
Wow.
And it's easily 9 o'clock. Then you get an hour to recap a little bit the day, take final measurements, some kind of qualitative data, so interviews for the psychologist, and be in bed by 10:30, sleep by 11. So 6 hours of sleep. In a lot of ways, not enough.
Right.
Pretty hammered after 30 days, that's for sure.
Right. Yes.
But I think we managed pretty well overall.
Wow. Yeah, man, it sounds amazing. And then also I'm sure it was like you're saying, 6 hours of sleep was also very rough. Sarah, when Tim's talking about measurements in the morning, are you from like afar collecting this data and they're logging this?
Yes, but first I just really want to commend Tim and Leanna. They're probably some of the best participants I've ever had. And your food records were just amazing. And so I think that's really reflective of how much energy and effort you put into this, and how much you really wanted to do research and get data. And I think that that's so important in doing these field type studies. You have to have buy-in from the participants. So to answer your question, yes, I was in Kelowna the whole time while they were doing all of this. The few days before they left on their ride, it was a little bit of a mad rush to make sure that they had all of the equipment. And, we had all of the instructions, that we were ready to go. And they both worked I think it was down to like the hour, basically, like getting all of this. And so, it really helped to have participants and athletes who were so flexible.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And so were you having them collect like every single urine sample, or?
No. And I can't remember the exact schedule, but I think, so usually with doubly liquid water, you dose, you collect a urine sample right before you dose, and then a few hours after. And then I think like 1 or 2 a few days after, and then 1 or 2 set of days after. Gotcha. But when you're in the middle of nowhere, it's challenging.
Right. Yes. And then other metrics. So you, Tim, you mentioned like interviewing with the psychiatrist or psychologist. Is that via Zoom, or is it a form you're doing for the mental side?
Yeah, we had some. So any data collection we did, we had sort of this pre-expedition component, a post-expedition component, and the expedition itself. And so most things pre-expedition we kind of did on site here in Carla Prado's lab, and Michael Kennedy, Emma Mosevich. So they're all University of Alberta scientists.
Cool.
For the psychology data, I think we had an app, right, Leanna? We had an app, and I think we used it daily, maybe every morning, every evening. And then midway into the ride, we also had an interview. So we actually sat down in a gym somewhere in a tiny settlement. We found a gym space and Wi-Fi, and because it had to be sort of private, right? We wouldn't want to like all sit in the van, the 3 of us, and you needed the privacy component. So So I think is that correct, Leanna? That's what we did. The app and
for both the physiology and the psych, we used an app called, I think it was RedCap. And so, Michael's team and then Amber's team, they put in questions to ask. The psychology, I think it was morning and night. And the physiology, we had to do it, I think it was within 20 minutes after finishing the ride, plus morning. So they came up with questions, and we just kind of went through, how tired are you in level, 1 to 10. And there's a variety of questions. It took a lot longer. It was a lot more consuming than I realized.
Wow. And are you also tracking like weight every day? Like, are you guys hopping on a bathroom scale every day or multiple times a day?
Yeah. Sarah sent us with a scale. I think did you require us to weigh? I know we would check in on our weight because I was curious. I wanted to know our heart rates for myself. I wanted to know heart rates and weights and blood pressure. Our blood pressure cuff went off. So for me, those were like daily indicators if there's any flags of getting sick or being run down or maybe needing a rest day. So from my end, but Sarah, I don't remember if you collected our weight halfway or.
Yeah, I think we had a few weights. It wasn't every day, but we had a few weights in that 1 week period with the doubly labeled water and nutrition.
Hey everyone, when's the last time you actually looked under the hood with comprehensive blood work? Most of you are training 10, 15, 20 hours a week, but have no idea if your body has what it needs to perform. Here's what we see constantly. Low ferritin tanking your aerobic capacity, vitamin D deficiency that's increasing your injury risk or keeping you sick, elevated cortisol from overtraining, thyroid markers that are normal but not optimal for an athlete. So that's why we created our full athlete blood panel. We test everything: complete metabolic panel, advanced lipids, iron stores, vitamin D, B12, folate, magnesium, testosterone, cortisol, thyroid, insulin, hemoglobin, you name it. It's over 20 markers that directly impact your performance and your recovery as an athlete. And you can get tested as soon as tomorrow morning. Check the show notes for the link to order. Some state restrictions do apply, but it's available in most of the US. Stop guessing and get the data. And now back to the show. So let's see. I'd love to hear. I know you talked about 16,000 calories from a sports product lens. Were you trying to eat so many calories per hour? Were you trying to hit so many grams of carbs per hour? Was there a target in mind for either one of you, Tim or Leanna?
I think the goal was to finish our snack bags. So if I knew each meal was going to be, say, between 500 and 700 calories, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then packing those snack bags, but when you're on the road, you're kind of just, you want to keep the drip going. And we're working at a low enough heart rate where where that digestive system's not inflamed or irritated. So it's really just being mindful to keep eating as you go, I think. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that.
That's great. Tim,
no, it's true. It wasn't kind of paying attention too much how many carbs or so per hour. It was literally, for me at least, it was literally just the luxury of having this little frame pouch on my top tube and just being able to snack. It's the best time to eat those things that you could never afford to eat in those quantities anywhere else on the bike.
Yes. So what were you eating? What was in your snack bag, Tim?
Well, you mentioned the jerky, which was actually really tasty. Lots of chocolate, dried mangoes,
nice
seeds, nuts.
Yeah,
all these tasty things. Some cookies.
Yeah,
that we got sponsored, which were really nice. They tasted way better on the road than afterwards, I have to say. When I tried them again, lots of things taste really good when you're when you're kind of on the move, right? As compared to everyday life. But I'd say that there was pretty much all staples.
Amazing. Yeah. So it sounds like you guys were able to put in more real food fueling as opposed to gummy bears and I don't know, soda and stuff like that. Was that the intention, trying to get more real food sources for energy, or what was the kind of thought around that?
Yeah, I really, the biggest thing for me was I didn't want to change too much of how we normally eat. So if we actually, we got to eat all these extra stuff, but it's not too far off of what we eat now. It's just it's not as high, and maybe we don't eat a bag of chips, or, but the mornings would start with heavy porridge, and I'd add extra scoop of peanut butter in there, extra trail mix in there. So adding extra to each meal. Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I just, what was your question? I just wanted.
Just trying to get more real food in versus manufactured.
Real food is because you can get a good variety for your taste buds. And I also think it's just what I always believe in is real simple ingredients as much as possible. I think it's just better for your body. When you're doing something like this, we're doing, 150 kilometers a day on average.
Yeah.
I don't want to be fueling with a whole bunch of crap and then you kind of feel this hungover because the next day we have to get up and cycle and do it again. So it has to become a lifestyle. And knowing going into this bigger expedition when we're going to be cycling even further, it's the same sort of thing. You have to make it very real life and we can't survive off of gummies and goos and pre-packed this and that. Like, I really believe in like simple ingredients.
Yeah.
Overall.
And much more micronutrient dense as well, right? Than, a pack of gummy worms or something like that. Okay. Well, Sarah, I'm going to have you break us down. What did you end up finding from the study? What changed?
Yeah, they ate a lot and they burned a lot. The take-home messages. So, one of the biggest things is that, their energy expenditure was incredibly high. So I'm just looking at the data here. So, for example, Leanna's was about 5,600 calories early in the ride. And then at the end of the ride, it was about 6,300.
Wow.
Timm's was 9,300 and about 9,200. So very, very high. These are some of the highest numbers, I've seen. And their physical activity level, unsurprisingly, was quite high as well. And so in the literature, what we use is PAL, so physical activity level. And this is the ratio between total and resting energy expenditure. There is some controversy in the field of energetics and energy balance about how long people can maintain these really high PAL values. And both of their PAL values during this ride were just slightly above what has been initially proposed as the limit to human energy expenditure.
Wow.
And they did this obviously on a plant-based diet. And I think with the plant-based diet, another thing that I want to highlight is they maintained a really high level of protein. So it's about 2.3 grams per kilogram of body weight.
Nice.
That's really high. Like that's hard to do just like living your life or just, regular athletes, not to mention that they were on the road, very remote locations for a lot of this and cycling for many hours a day. I think the average time that they were cycling was like 7 hours a day or something, 6 or 7. And so to maintain that high level of protein, it just really goes to show that Leanna's planning paid off and, talking with the dietitian and everything. So yeah, overall, they burned a lot, they ate a lot. It was really impressive.
Amazing. And what were those compositional changes from beginning to end after the study?
Like body composition?
Yeah, or weight data, or if you guys did you do that? I thought I saw you did that, something like that.
Yeah. So, I kind of went into this thinking, okay, they're totally going to lose weight, right? Like, this is a huge energetic strain, but actually both of them maintained their body weight within 2%, which is really impressive. Leanna maintained her weight. Tim, I believe you maintained your weight, but then there were slight changes in your fat mass. I think that decreased. And then I believe your fat-free mass increased by like very, very small amounts. And so I think that really, again, just goes to show that they're really cognizant of their nutrition.
Yeah, amazing. And for our listeners too, like this is a study with 2 people, one female, one male. But do you think there's, based off what you found from the compositional changes in the energy intake, like, do you think that there's a hormonal aspect at play there?
Potentially. It's impossible to say with this study because we didn't measure that. As you said, it's with 2 people. There could absolutely be hormonal changes. Some of that could potentially be water retention as well. But yeah, that could potentially impact that.
Wow. This is so cool. And then was there any takeaways or findings regarding the mental aspect side of things from the study?
I can't speak to that. That was another research group, and maybe Leanna and Tim. I don't know if you Have any thoughts?
You feel like your mental...
Yeah, nothing's been published yet.
Yeah.
I know
Okay.
they've taken it to a conference,
Mm.
but I have to add, Sarah was exceptionally fast in getting that published.
I was also
being a
pregnant. I was like, I gotta get this out.
Wow.
being a scientist myself, I know how scientific papers can just drag on. There's so many steps in the system.
Right.
So yeah, Sarah was extremely fast, and I don't know, maybe you know something, Leanna, but I don't know really the findings for the psychological study. Is there something, Leanna?
No, I think the only thing we were told at this point was that they came out with a new way to get their data points, from my understanding. Yeah, but they're still going to work with us moving forward.
Okay, so when you say work with us, there's another long bike riding project coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, for sure. I'll let Tim dive into our Wings of Survival project. It's a 30,000 kilometer cycle from Alaska to Patagonia. But Tim, I'll let you go into a little more detail about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's going to happen this July.
Wow.
So we're going to start in Prudhoe Bay at the very top of Alaska, and we're going all the way down to Ushuaia. So that's the southern tip of South America, 15 countries en route. It's the progression of summer. So we're trying to do this in about 8 to 9 months.
Wow.
And people do this, but the unique, not many, but people do this, but the really unique component is we're following the migration of birds.
So
and
cool.
We're basically portraying birds as the greatest athletes on the planet, and our numbers might sound very impressive, but you look at these birds, it's just totally outrageous. And the idea behind this is to really draw more people into the fragility and the threats nature is facing, and using kind of the human element as a hook to excite people, because there's always these beautiful natural history films, and they get better and better, but it only attracts a certain type of people. And then there's maybe extreme sports events, again, a different type of people. But how do you bring those different worlds of scientific exploration and natural history and use education? How do you bring this into one story and do it very organically? And I think this is something we've tried to build, and it's been 5 years in the making. So
wow.
The ride across Canada was, well, coming up 2 years very soon. So this was sort of somewhere in the middle, and it was an incredibly good practicing opportunity. Lots of lessons learned. It's been very helpful. But just 7 weeks away, 7 weeks away from the start.
Yeah.
For the big expedition, and getting nervous.
I'm sure you guys are going to do great. Is there anybody documenting it? Like, I feel like you guys should do a documentary on this.
Yeah, we've had a movie production company. So our producer, Justin Brunel, he's with Moving Artistry Productions. That's his company. And he was filming me during an Ironman event and heard us talking about this other great adventure we were planning. And he kind of said, we were telling him we were preparing for Ironman in Patagonia. It's supposed to be the world's hardest Ironman. And he said, I'll come with you and we'll see if we all get along. 'Cause making a documentary. I mean, Justin's everywhere with us.
Right.
So we have to get along and have a great relationship. And he's like, no hard feelings if we don't get along, but if we do, let's do this and let's build a documentary. So it's been kind of, as Tim said, the last 5 years. Justin's been almost on all our holidays with us. Usually there's some sort of purpose around why we travel. So Justin comes along and captures film and, records sessions with our dietitian or psychology or just the other tests that we do. And so, it will definitely be a documentary, which I'm so excited to see.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. You guys will have to let us know when that gets published and put out, because we will definitely want to be sharing that and then adding it to the show notes for sure for this. That's really fascinating. Exciting. Okay, so talking about what we were covering today, lessons learned. Tim, you kind of touched on a little bit. What are some of the things that maybe you learned that you're going to be changing for this next adventure you're diving into?
Changing, I think, just more sleep. There's no, we got so tired in the end. We'd literally fall asleep on the bike. So
wow,
not good. Because there's so much happening that should never happen, right? With everything that's going on, that's different from sitting in an office.
Right.
And still we'd get so tired that we'd literally fall asleep.
Wow.
So just getting more sleep. We'll have some rest days if you want in between. We'll use them for community engagement. So it's become this big project. So there's, as I said, this education component and different types of scientific data collection. We work with community. So it's become this big undertaking, but it won't be continuously 8 months nonstop. There'll always be the occasional day of just resting, at least off the bike. So I'd say more sleep.
I love it. That makes me think too, for your route, is your route published? Like, are you going to be coming down through California Bay Area by any chance?
California, we're actually going to be very close to the Pacific.
Nice.
So mostly along the coastline.
Cool.
It's not on, well, there's sort of a route on the Wings of Survival website at the moment, but we're just in the process of getting a very interactive, let's call it expedition map. So we went, just briefly, we went to Patagonia late January, and we teamed up with a scientist from Western University, Chris Guglielmo, and a professor at a Chilean university, Juan Navedo. So we teamed up. They're experts on putting GPS devices on birds. So they're kind of like the tiniest things, and they're solar powered, and they attach them like a backpack. So it's sort of a harness system. And it's fascinating science. So we'd be kind of walking into the mudflats and observing this particular species that we follow. It's called a whimbrel. So it's a shorebird. Fits into the size of my palms. Got a long beak to look for fiddler crabs. There's only 2 species that potentially do this entire journey from Alaska to Patagonia.
Whoa.
But one of them tends to zigzag a bit, going to the Atlantic, back to the Pacific. Can't do that on a bicycle. So we picked the whimbrel, which pretty much migrates along the Pacific coastline. So we went to this island, teamed up with a scientist. We caught 9 birds. So it's a cannon netting, like a standard technique. You put a net out, you roll it up on the beach. The tide is coming in, so are the birds coming in as they're looking for food. And, you know, when you see a bird standing on kind of one leg, they're obviously resting. So they're taking a break. They come in. They get right in front of this rolled up net, and then you fire the gun. So the gun is basically shooting the net over the birds.
Wow.
You run to the beach, you grab the birds, you put them into a little bag, you safely take them to a kind of processing area, an outdoor lab in a way, and then you take some measurements and then put the little GPS, and then Justin's filming us releasing those birds and wishing them well.
Cool.
So of those, just briefly, of those birds we tagged, of the 5, 2 never left. Sometimes they don't migrate. It also depends on age. And they have to feel ready for it, I suppose. If they don't feel well or nourished well, they don't migrate. So from Chiloé Island, which is quite far south, 3 of those birds traveled in one go to Baja California. And we're live tracking them so we can see what they did. So they took the same journey pretty much, and it took them 5 days at 80 kilometers an hour nonstop. So as I said, completely crazy. And we were talking to the scientists, and they're kind of crunching the numbers, and they're looking at metabolism and maximum weight to actually be able to take off all these different altitude, oxygen levels, all these different parameters. They're putting it into their equations. And they're like, these birds should fall off the sky after 4 days, but they can potentially travel 8 days. So it's pretty astonishing. So those 3 birds get to Baja California, pretty much the same route. And then they're starting to have their own little kind of decision making. One bird is still there. It's just hopping around between 2 beaches, seems to like enjoy the lifestyle there, not really making a move. The other one was traveling for about 2 weeks along the Pacific coastline of the US. So literally just hopping from one kind of beach to the next, if you want, and then stopped in Seattle for a week, kind of refueling a bit, and then went to Alaska, close to Anchorage. The other one, the last one, just went straight from Baja to Alaska. That's another 3-day trip, 5,000 kilometers. And we're now seeing it's on the way to Western Alaska, which is the breeding grounds. So they're taking on this incredible journey, literally just to reproduce, because in Alaska, the amount of insects is perfect for them, and sort of the safety of remote places that you don't find on a beach. So just to reproduce, they basically take on this journey, and they do this every year, right? So they go to Alaska, go back, and so our ultimate goal is to meet those same individuals again on the same beach where we take them in Chile. So they have strong site fidelity. They tend to return to the same places they visit.
That is so fascinating. I cannot wait for this documentary to come out. Like, this will be so cool to be able to, like, see stuff like that alongside cyclists going along the journey. Okay, well, I want to be mindful of your time, so I'm going to jump back to your two truths and a lie. I'll start with you, Sarah. You said the blue whale burns 4 million calories a day. African bush elephant burns 200,000 calories a day. And the polar bear could eat 60,000 calories in one sitting. I thought the polar bear one was a lie. Which one was the lie? No?
It's the bush elephant. So it's actually a little bit lower. So it's up to 120,000 calories a day. So I'm not a biologist, but from what I understand, the 60,000 calorie figure from polar bears is like if they catch a big seal.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah.
Wild. That is wild to think about it in that terms. Like a big seagull is 60,000 calories of energy.
Or seal.
Seal. Oh, I was like, that's a huge seagull.
But now I'm so curious, like, what is the energy expenditure of these birds that you're following? I'm going to do a little bit of digging. Maybe
that is fascinating. Yeah. Wow. Okay. And then Leanna, you said you ran the Mount Everest marathon. You long jumped for Team Canada, and that you own a chocolate company. I heard you mention chocolate a few times in your bag on your bike. I thought that one was the lie, the chocolate company. Which one was your lie?
I didn't long jump for Team Canada. I pole vaulted for Team Canada.
That's what it was. Darn it. Okay. Yes, I did. So you have your own chocolate company? That's so cool.
Yeah, I founded a company called 7 Summit Snacks with my sister. And basically, because we were sick of using gels, like I said, I love Whole Foods and ingredients lines I know and understand. So we've developed a product line of chocolate that you can use while you're cycling, running, swimming, even being outside hiking. So
I love that. Do you sell that in the United States too? Can people buy?
We do mostly in Colorado right now. We're slowly branching out, but we can definitely send you some.
All right. We will link that company in the show notes. People can check out. Who doesn't want to fuel with chocolate? Okay. And then Tim, you said birds are dinosaurs, which I feel like I'm highly convinced by, but then maybe too much Jurassic Park. Birds can only migrate during daylight. I thought that was a lie. And then you said some birds enjoy a vegan lifestyle. Which one was the lie?
Oh, you got it right.
I did.
They migrate. Yeah, they migrate day and night.
Okay, that makes sense based off of what you were explaining to us too just now.
Actually, mostly at night.
Really? Huh.
Yeah,
because they're eating during the day, or?
Well, it's sort of escaping predators.
Oh, yeah.
Predators are active during the day.
Yeah.
So I think the ones that people are familiar seeing is the big ones, the geese and the cranes, but it's actually close to 40% of the 11,000 species on the planet migrate, and some just short distances, but some very far.
Very cool. This has been so fun. Okay, so Tim and Leanna, we know what's coming down the pipeline for you. You guys got another big ride. Sarah, what's coming down the pipeline for you in the next couple months, year? Any studies coming out we should keep our eyes peeled for? Or?
Yeah, I have some research related to ovarian sex hormones, so estradiol and progesterone. Cool. Oral contraceptive pills. These are all not in athletes, but I know you also interviewed Trent Stellingworth and Susan Volkman for Project Further. So we're close to submitting the diet part of that. So I think hopefully the next few months that'll be coming out as well.
Cool. Amazing. Well, we will. And do any of you guys, do you want to share Instagram handles, social handles where people can find you, follow you? I'll have Sarah, you can start. Then we'll go to Tim and Leanna.
I am really bad at social media.
Okay.
So I just have my own personal one. But if anyone's interested, they can just Google my name, University of British Columbia, or ResearchGate or something like that, and reach me through email.
Perfect. And then Tim, where can people find you and follow you? Yeah,
the website, www.wingsofsurvival.com.
Perfect.
is definitely the best one. We're trying to, as I said, have this interactive platform. So it'll be directly linked to Instagram, and then the handle is Wings of Survival. Trying to keep it kind of contained to as few platforms as possible. So I'd say those are the two main ones.
Perfect. Amazing. We will link that. And then Leanna, what about you? The chocolate company and anywhere else?
Wings of Survival, Seven Summit Snacks is our chocolate company. And then at Leanna Carriere, I have all my other things on there as well.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, we will certainly keep our eyes peeled for that documentary. Do please let us know when that comes out, because I want to watch it. I'm sure our listeners are also very intrigued as well. But this has been fascinating, and I'm sure I could have asked you guys all a million more questions, but thank you so much for your time. This has been amazing.
Thank you
for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much.
To stay up to date with the Nutritional Revolution recent activities, follow Nutritional Revolution on Instagram and Facebook, and sign up to receive the Nutritional Revolution newsletters on the Nutritional Revolution website. If you guys enjoyed today's content, please hit subscribe below to stay up to date on the latest Nutritional Revolution posts. Have a healthy day.